Super Dentons. Is there such thing? Is there a Super Denton?
Does it look older than the 70s?
The answer is yes. Any interest?
Yes.
Extra
Super Denton?
Yeah, there's a three-way.
What?
A dome mid. Yeah, I've been kind of eyeing them for the past few weeks. I was going to reach out and ask for a pair to borrow, but
yeah, there is Wharfedale Super Denton. What?
Yeah, but I don't know if they're
anniversary was some of my favorites.
I don't know if they're available in the US. Like, I don't know if this is because right now they're on the typical HiFi like news websites, you know, and usually that means it's going to be a month or 2 or 3 or 15 or something before they actually make it to where you can buy them.
Hey, seriously, those are the first 85th anniversary Dentons.
Yeah,
some of my favorite bookshelf speakers.
Yeah,
they were in my storage fire, so I'm sad about that. But you reviewed the Lintons, and I remember you
like the Lintons a lot. I still recommend the Lintons. They're still one of my favorite speakers.
Yeah, dude, these had, I'm guessing, based on how much you like those, that the original Denton 85th bookshelf speakers probably had a similar tonality or something like that.
Yeah, I'm sure they do.
But this, now they got
price says 163,000 focals. If you look at it again, it's got the little F, the focal F. When you go look, see that little thing? It's a tornado,
bro. It's not a focal, bro.
Look at how, dude. That's a handsome speaker.
It's a handsome speaker.
It's a handsome speaker. I think
it is. It's a good-looking little speaker. You probably need to measure it with the grill on.
Look at that grill. I like the grill, how it's flush.
Part of their design. I'm sure it's supposed to be listened to and measured with the grill on.
Bet you. Yeah, probably.
You know what? I'm always curious about the offset tweeter. How does that affect the directivity? Is that good? Is it positive? Negative?
Has to be, right?
And how do you measure those? Like, how do you put that on the clipple? You know, like axis.
So with something like that, you have a couple options. One is to reach out to the manufacturer and hope that they reply and tell you where they intended for you to listen to it at, like the reference axis. And then the other one is just to make an assumption, measure it, and then look at the data afterward. Because you can still, the cool thing about the clipple is I could set the reference point to be at the tweeter, and then I could look at the data and say, actually, it looks a little bit better below the tweeter. And then in the software, I don't have to remeasure it, but in the software, I can say, change the reference point to right above the mid-range, then the center of the baffle, and then it'll go and it'll spit out the results with your reference point.
That's awesome. They're like
super awesome.
The reference point is at the W. Don't you know? That's why
you don't know.
You win.
The JBL L52 Classic that I recently reviewed has an offset tweeter, and the owner had measured. His name is Napier Lopez. He had measured and reviewed another model before that, like the L82, I think, maybe. And so he gave me some advice on where the reference was supposed to be. But I actually found out that it measures better with the reference point at the mid-range of that particular speaker, which is wild. I did not expect that, but I was able to figure that out by looking at the measurements.
So then do you sit with instead of the tweeter aimed at your ear, you use with the mid-range?
Yeah, actually, in that case, I just sat lower. That's all I did. I was just like, well, let's see if... But I'll be honest, man, like the listening distances that we are, sometimes I don't really even notice a difference. And then sometimes you do. It really is speaker dependent.
Yeah.
Larry
had a little crosshair on them, like, you know, like all the new speakers have like a little, some kind of marking.
Yeah, like
a little marking to let you know, like, this is it.
That's where you measure at.
But man, we're being super specific. Like you're saying, when you're at the listening distance, unless it's close, like the closer you are, the more it matters, right?
Right. Yeah.
But at a far distance is like, I don't. Yeah, I guess. Except for like something like those Polk, the reference. It's so narrow that the tweeter radiation's so narrow, like you could really get out of the.
Oh yeah, it doesn't take much at all.
Like,
then you're like, what is going on here?
Marv says Aaron can hold the big speakers while the clipple does the thing.
That's right. I just hold it up.
It's your exercise for the month.
Yeah,
2 hours.
Roll tower speakers.
Measure at the M. Turn it upside down and measure at the M.
You could do that. Oh man, I've got those PS Audio FR10s, and I set those up yesterday, and I'll be putting them on the clipple sometime this week. I want to listen to them first, right? Because I measure with my ears. Those things, man, they're pretty freaking impressive. I'm like, dang.
So have you been like making notes and writing up your
Yeah.
You know, do you have to say Arnie Nudell?
I don't think I do.
I'm just saying. I'm just wondering if that's gonna have to come out in your video.
Let's see. I say tight mid bass and not boomy at all. Clear as a bell mid range. Highs are tipped up on axis, so I have to turn them off. And then I say wide Sweet Emotion. So Sweet Emotion by Aerosmith. It's got all these like weird effects. You know, if you listen to it, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's just got some crazy effects going on. And that's the one thing I like about it is they're kind of layered and they're placed like sporadically. And with that particular track, when I turn the speakers out for like 20 degrees, well, even with them on axis, they're still wide. But when I turn them 20 degrees off axis and brought that high frequency, what sounded like high frequency tilt down, the stage is just like really wide. They're really good speakers, man. I don't know that I've heard. I'm sticking my neck out because I haven't shown the measurements. I haven't even seen what they look like yet. But I don't know that I've heard mid bass, upper mid bass, lower mid range as clear as I have with these speakers, or with any other speakers as I have with these speakers. And I have to think that it really has something to do with the fact that they got the two woofers on the floor to help kind of overcome the floor bounce that you normally get. Right. So there's, instead of being a dip around 300 hertz or so from the floor bounce, it's kind of filled in, and it just sounds full, man. Like they sound really freaking good.
That's awesome.
I'm curious to see what the measurements look like.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's
then
good to
I
hear.
think I'm going to drag in the Kef Blade 2 metas. I think I'm going to try to drag those in maybe tomorrow night or sometime this weekend and start listening to those soon too. I really want to kind of go back and forth between these PS Audios versus the Kef because they're completely different designs. I think I figured it out, dude. I think if I'm going to make a speaker, I'm going to make it a cardioid design, and it's going to have floor woofers instead of woofers at the top. I think that's like, those are the two best traits that I've ever heard in a speaker. But that's why I'm thinking about these Kefs now. I'm like, man, I hope these sound good, because now I've got it in my head that floor woofers are kind of the thing. You know, like I really think there's a lot to it.
Did you say floor woofers or floor woofers?
Floor, like placed closer to the floor.
So here's something that real quick, I don't know if it's related or not, but I was talking about how I like these monolith THX8 subwoofers, right? Because the woofers pointed downwards towards the floor, and the port is also facing downwards to the floor. And you know, sometimes we have people ask about their subs, where they should place them, and sometimes they think like, oh, maybe if I put the sub, you know, we talk about having the speaker 3 feet from the wall. Sometimes you say that, right? Yeah. And so they think like, if I put the sub out 3 feet like that, yeah, maybe, or maybe 2 feet or 1 foot, right? They're trying to, and what they end up getting is like, they end up canceling out some stuff. So sometimes it's better to have it closer to the wall.
Right.
And now,
and I don't know what the crossover is, but I'll show it. This is what I'm talking about with these two mid bass drivers that are closer to the floor. Do they say what the crossover is? $10,000 a pair, but they look cool. And there's the designer. So I've talked with him a little bit about them.
And the mid range is what? Which one is the mid range on there?
I'll show you. Let me go back. Let me find the crossover. See if it says. Am I missing it? Oh,
so that's not that. Okay,
550 and 1750. So those mid bass drivers play up to 550 or so. I'm guessing they probably got a pretty tight crossover network. Okay, what was the question?
Mid-range right there.
And then tweeter right there. Yeah, I'm sitting on the tweeter axis. I did verify that was the intended listening axis. And they actually have a good manual. You know, like a lot of these manufacturers, the manual doesn't say anything about setting them up, but this manual actually gives you an overhead view of, one is with them pointed at you, and then it also has like another option in the same photo of towing them out, and it says to aim them about 20 degrees. No, maybe it's 3 feet behind the listener, which is about 20 degrees, I think is what it said. But yeah, man, I like them, dude. I'm impressed. And I'm kind of glad, because PS Audio and the audio science review people have been doing like this for the past couple of years, and it's really just kind of annoying to see it. But I had a lot of hope for the speaker, and I'm glad that it seems to be turning out well so far. Like I said, I'm curious to see what the measurements are going to look like, though.
Yeah. Well, that's like I'm saying. I'm glad that it's a good product. You know, it just gets me. It throws me off a little bit when when he starts talking about like, you know, some stuff that's a little esoteric and stuff I'm not really into. And so I'm like you make some stuff that's really cool and it makes sense, and then some of the stuff he says like I agree with that. I agree with all that. And then you say this thing, I'm like, oh, not you, but
no, I do too. But yeah,
I agree with all that. And then you said this one thing, I'm like, well, that's weird. Okay, I'm not sure. Or you can't take everything everyone says, right?
Yeah,
you can take from here and take from there. Some people you may agree with more, and that's what you gotta do.
Make sure to join us every Monday for our live stream at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern at youtube.com/Daily HiFi.